Today, we're diving into a really fascinating ancient legal puzzle. So imagine a sacred ritual gets interrupted, and now you've got these holy leftovers. What do you do with them? It sounds super specific, I know, but the debate that it sparked, well, it reveals some incredibly profound ideas about purpose, potential, and what it even means for something to be sacred. All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the scenario that kicks this whole thing off, the high priest's offering. Then we'll look at the first rule they came up with and a really sharp logical objection that someone raised. After that, we'll explore two totally different ways they tried to defend that original rule. And finally, we'll zoom out and ask, why does this ancient puzzle still matter to us today? Okay, let's set the stage. I want you to picture this. We're in ancient Jerusalem, at the temple, and we're about to walk through a very specific hypothetical scenario about the high priest's daily flour offering. So here's how it goes down. The high priest brings his daily offering, but then, right in the middle of the ritual, he dies. So a new high priest gets appointed, and he has to bring his own offering to complete the day's service. And that's what creates our puzzle. We now have two leftover halves, one from the priest who died and one from the new guy. And that leads us to the core question. What do you do now? I mean, these aren't just any old leftovers. They were meant for a sacred purpose. You can't just toss them in the trash, but you can't use them on the altar either. So how do you properly get rid of these sacred but now totally disqualified items? So the ancient text, the Talmud, gives us an initial ruling. It comes from a sage who's known as a Tana, and his answer is based on this really specific principle for what to do with holy objects that have been disqualified. But first, we need to wrap our heads around this key concept called ibor tsura. It literally means decay of form. And you can kind of think of it like a ritual cool-down period. The idea is that certain offerings that get disqualified can't just be disposed of right away. You have to let them sit, usually overnight, to let them lose their form or their sacred status before you can take them out to be burned. So here's the crucial part of the Tana's ruling. He says both halves, the one from the first priest and the one from the second priest, have to go through this decay process. Both of them have to wait overnight before they get burned. Seems straightforward enough, right? A consistent, respectful way to handle things. Well, not so fast. Because another scholar comes into the picture, a really sharp, logical thinker named Rav Naḥman. He hears this ruling and he immediately spots what he thinks is a major flaw in the logic. Rav Naḥman basically puts his hand up and says, hold on a minute. Why are we treating both of these halves the same? Does it really make sense to apply this decay of form rule to both of them equally? He argues that, if you think about it, their histories are totally different. And Rav Naḥman's logic is just razor sharp. He breaks it down like this. For the first priest half, yeah, the rule makes total sense. That offering was sacred. It was perfectly fit for the altar before the priest's death disqualified it. So sure, it needs that decay period. But the second priest's half, it was never ever going to be used. The text even says it was brought to be lost from the outset. It was basically destined for disposal from the very beginning. So why in the world does it need a ritual cooldown? Okay, so that's a pretty powerful objection from Rav Naḥman. It seems to blow a hole in that original, simple ruling. So in its defense, one school of thought comes back with let's call it a sweeping, no-compromise kind of justification. The school of a sage named Rava bar Ava basically says, look, the rule is the rule. Their argument is that any object that falls into the category of a disqualified offering has to go through the decay process. It doesn't matter how it got there, it's just a blanket policy. No exceptions, no looking into complicated backstories. If it's disqualified, it waits. It's a simple, if very rigid, answer to Rav Naḥman's challenge. But then we get another scholar, Rav Ashi, who comes in with a much more elegant and frankly brilliant solution to Rav Naḥman's puzzle. He completely sidesteps the whole debate about the object's history. Rav Ashi's big move is to say that everybody is looking at the wrong moment in time. He says, forget about an object's past, whether it was once fit or never fit. The absolute key is its potential at the critical moment of decision. Here's how his incredible logic works. Just picture the new high priest standing there with both halves in his hands. Now, at that single moment, before he makes his choice, either one of them is a totally viable candidate for the altar. He could pick the old half, or he could pick the new half. And because both of them had the potential to be chosen and become sacred, they are both, in that instant, considered fit for sacrifice. And so after he makes his choice, the leftover one, whichever one it ends up being, has to go through the decay process. It's just brilliant. So, a really deep dive into ancient flower offerings. And you might be thinking, why does a hyper-specific debate like this from almost 2,000 years ago still grab our attention? What's the big picture here? Well, it's because this ancient puzzle reveals these incredibly modern principles. Rav Ashi's whole argument introduces this idea that an object's status isn't just defined by its past, but by its potential future. The entire debate shows this deep, profound respect for objects that were given a purpose, even after that purpose is gone. And maybe most of all, it's just a masterclass in legal reasoning. It shows how you can use sharp logic, not to tear down a tradition, but to understand it and justify it in a much deeper, more consistent way. And that really leaves us with this final thought. This isn't just about ancient offerings, is it? It's a question we face all the time. What do you do with a decommissioned warship, a retired flag, or even something personal, like a wedding dress you'll never wear again? This ancient debate really forces us to ask ourselves, how do we treat the things in our own lives that have lost their function, but are still just so heavy with history, with meaning, and with what they could have been?